Have you ever seen someone walk into Judge Caprio's courtroom so sure her money, her followers, and her phone could protect her, only to realize that the same phone was about to ruin her in front of everyone? Drop a comment telling us the exact second you think she should have put that phone away, because what happened in this courtroom still leaves people speechless. By the time this story ends, one woman's smirk will be gone, three victims will finally be heard, and a packed courtroom will watch arrogance crack in real time. Hit that subscribe button if you believe nobody is above basic decency, no matter what car they drive or how expensive their watch is. This was not one of those slow, forgettable mornings where people shuffled in, paid a fine, and went home. This was the kind of morning that starts with whispers and ends with a silence so heavy you can hear a pen drop across the room. Like this video, if you believe some lessons only land when the whole world is forced to watch. At 9:12 on a rainy Tuesday morning, October 14, 2025, Courtroom 3 at the Providence Municipal Court was already full. Wet umbrellas dripped into plastic bins by the door. Shoes squeaked against the polished tile. The old heating vent clicked on and off with a tired metallic groan. A clerk named Maria DeLuca sat behind her monitor, reading off case numbers in the steady voice of someone who had seen every excuse a human being could invent. Then the door opened, and in walked Victoria Pembroke. She was 38, tall, poised, and wearing the kind of outfit designed to make people move aside before she even spoke. Camel Burberry trench coat, cream silk blouse tucked into tailored black slacks, red-soled Christian Louboutin heels that clicked like tiny warning shots. On her left wrist, a Cartier love bracelet. On her right hand, a diamond ring she still wore even though the divorce had been final for 7 months. She carried a Goyard tote, an iced oat milk latte, and an iPhone 16 Pro Max in a blush pink case, monogrammed with the gold initials VP. Outside, parked illegally for 3 minutes in a loading zone, was her silver Mercedes-Benz GLE 450 with Rhode Island vanity plates that read VICKIP. Share this with someone who needs to see what entitlement looks like before it gets corrected, because Victoria did not enter that courtroom like a defendant. She entered like a woman arriving at a brunch she believed she had sponsored. She slowed just enough to glance at the people waiting on the wooden benches. A man in a construction vest rubbing his knee, a grandmother holding a folder with both hands, a teenage boy beside his father, whispering nervously, a single mother with tired eyes and a navy Walmart cardigan, trying to keep her little girl entertained with crackers in a zip bag. Victoria's mouth curled for half a second, not a full smile. Worse, the kind of little private expression that says, "I don't belong with these people." Then she lifted her phone. Not to check a message, not to silence it. She lifted it chest high, angled the camera, and began recording. At first nobody noticed. The phone was vertical, subtle. She held it low and close to her latte cup, speaking under her breath without moving her lips much. "Good morning, guys," she whispered to the lens. "You would not believe where I am. Small claims circus, municipal traffic theater. Let's see if the famous nice guy judge is still smiling when someone with an attorney shows up." One of the women on the bench looked over, confused. Victoria turned slightly and caught the whole room in frame. She even let the camera pause on the tired mother and her daughter, then on a man in a leg brace, then on the judge's empty seat. "If you've ever wanted to see how the system treats people," she murmured, "stay with me." That was the first lie of the morning. She wasn't there to expose the system. She was there to feed her followers. Victoria had built an online brand out of polished superiority. Her account, at Victoria Unfiltered, had grown from makeup tutorials and luxury skincare routines into what she called truth with standards, a blend of designer hauls, divorce glow-up content, and contempt dressed as confidence. She filmed waiters who got her order wrong. She reviewed hotel staff as if she were grading schoolchildren. She once posted a 10-minute rant because a valet returned her Porsche with the seat too far back. Her audience called her brutally honest. Her critics called her a rich bully with ring lights. That morning, she thought the courtroom would be another clip. Maria DeLuca noticed the phone when Victoria took 3 slow steps toward the second row and turned the lens toward the bench. Maria leaned forward and spoke softly but firmly. "Ma'am, no recording in the courtroom." Victoria lowered the phone an inch, not enough to actually stop. "I'm not recording." Maria looked straight at the glowing screen. "Your camera is on." "I'm checking my messages." "No phones." "Out for recording video or audio," Maria said. "Please put it away now." Victoria gave a small laugh. "This is a public courtroom." Maria didn't blink, and those are the rules. For a moment, it looked like Victoria might comply. Instead, she hit the side button, lowered the brightness, and slipped the phone halfway into her tote with the lens still peeking out through the open zipper. That was the moment Sergeant Leon Mercer, the courtroom bailiff, looked up from the side wall. Everyone who had ever spent more than 5 minutes in that room knew Leon. Broad shoulders, silver hair clipped close, deep voice, the kind of man who didn't need to raise it. He took 2 calm steps forward. "Ma'am," he said, "either the phone goes off or it comes with me." Victoria turned with the stunned expression of someone who was genuinely offended that consequences had spoken to her directly. "Excuse me." "The phone." She forced a smile. "I know who you are. I'm not a criminal." Leon's face did not move. "That's good. Then this should be easy." A few people on the benches exchanged glances. The little girl with the crackers stopped crunching. Victoria slid the phone into her tote at last, but not before whispering one last line toward the opening. "This place is unbelievable." And if that had been all, maybe it would have ended as a simple warning. Maybe she would have paid a fine, rolled her eyes, and told the story over cocktails that night. But the problem with people who live through a camera is that they forget cameras don't always stay loyal. At 9:27, Judge Frank Caprio walked in. He moved the same way he always did, without drama, without hurry, carrying the quiet authority of a man who did not need to perform power because he understood it. Dark suit, crisp white shirt, red tie, glasses low on his nose. He greeted the room with that familiar steady warmth that had comforted thousands and unnerved just as many. "Good morning, everybody." The room answered back, "Good morning, Judge." Rain tapped against the high windows. Papers shifted. A cough echoed from the hallway. Judge Caprio glanced at the docket, then up at the people before him, as if reminding them and himself that every file represented a real day in a real life. He handled the first few cases with speed and grace. A young man with an expired registration, an elderly veteran who had parked too close to a hydrant while picking up medication, a college student crying because she couldn't afford the full amount. Judge Caprio listened, asked questions, corrected what needed correcting, reduced what could be reduced. The courtroom softened the way it often did under his voice. Victoria hated that. She sat with one ankle crossed over the other, jaw set, checking her reflection in the black screen of her phone every few minutes. Every time someone received patience from the bench, she seemed more irritated, not less, as if compassion itself offended her. Twice she leaned toward her attorney, Miles Treadwell, and whispered behind her hand. Miles was a polished local lawyer in his mid-40s with a navy suit, a gold tie clip, and the strained expression of a man who had already spent too much time that morning asking a client not to make things worse. He kept telling her the same thing in a lower and lower voice. "Please don't speak unless asked. Please keep your phone away. Please let me handle this." Victoria nodded each time, with the empty obedience of someone planning to do the opposite. Then came the moment that changed the air in the room. A case involving the woman in the navy cardigan was called. Her name was Janelle Price. She stood nervous, and explained that she had missed a payment deadline on a previous citation because her car had been in the repair shop after an accident. Her daughter, Sophia, no older than 6, sat on the bench swinging little pink sneakers and hugging a stuffed rabbit with one missing ear. Janelle's voice shook. "I work nights at Kent County, Your Honor. I'm catching up. I just needed a little time." Judge Caprio asked a few questions. His tone was gentle. Janelle answered honestly. It was clear she wasn't making excuses. She was hanging on by threads. Victoria rolled her eyes, so hard the movement was visible from 2 rows back. Then, thinking nobody important was watching, she slipped her phone out again under the edge of her tote and typed something fast. A second later, her screen glowed with a reply and the camera icon flashed. She was recording again. This time, the lens was aimed directly at Janelle and her child. She whispered, barely audible, "There it is, weaponized tears." The man in the construction vest heard her. So did Maria, so did Leon, and this time so did Judge Caprio. He looked up from the file, not sharply, just enough. "Ma'am in the second row," he said, "put the phone away." Every neck in the room turned. Victoria froze with the phone in her hand. For a beat, she seemed to think charm would carry her through. "Oh," she said lightly, "I'm so sorry, I was only—" "You were recording," he said. "No, Your Honor, I was texting." He held her gaze for 2 seconds that felt much longer. "Put it away." She did, but the smile that followed was the kind that can make a whole room dislike you at once. If you've ever seen someone mistake patience for weakness, hit the like button, because Victoria was about to learn the difference in the hardest possible way. Judge Caprio finished Janelle's matter and gave her extra time. Janelle nodded so fast tears spilled down her face. Sophia clutched the stuffed rabbit and whispered, "Thank you, Judge." A soft ripple of warmth moved through the room. Victoria muttered, just loud enough for Miles to hear, "Of course." Miles closed his eyes for half a second like a man praying in public, without moving his lips. Then Maria called the next case. "Case number TR 258841, she said. "Victoria Eleanor Pembroke." Victoria rose immediately, smoothing her blouse. She carried herself to the podium like it was a runway and not a place where truth waits for you. Miles followed with a leather folder tucked under his arm. Judge Caprio read from the file. "Ms. Pembroke, September 3, 2025, handheld mobile device violation, failure to yield, unsafe lane incursion, and conduct causing bodily injury related to a traffic incident on North Main Street near Doyle Avenue at 3:47 p.m. How do you plead?" "Not guilty," Miles said. Judge Caprio glanced at Victoria. "And how do you explain the incident, ma'am?" She lifted her chin. "It was a misunderstanding." "Tell me." "I was moving with traffic. A delivery scooter came out of nowhere. Another vehicle overreacted. It became chaos. I did not intentionally hurt anyone." Judge Caprio folded his hands. "No one said intentionally." She pressed on anyway. "And frankly, the reporting was exaggerated. My insurance company is already addressing the property issue." Property issue. Not the broken wrist, not the torn ligament, not the child who had nightmares. Property issue. A sound moved through the gallery. Not loud, more like the breath people make when outrage is trying not to become a voice. Judge Caprio looked at the file again. There were injuries. "Minor," Victoria said. Miles turned so fast toward her that his chair actually scraped. "Victoria." But it was too late. Judge Caprio's tone stayed level. "Minor to whom?" That question landed harder than if he had shouted. Victoria blinked. "I mean, relative to what the officer wrote, there was no fatality, no." The entire room went cold. Even the rain outside seemed quieter. Judge Caprio did not interrupt her. That made it worse. He let her hear what she had just said. He let everyone hear it with her. Finally, he asked, "Would you like to revise that statement?" Victoria crossed her arms. "I'm saying this became dramatic for no reason. People today know how to turn a bump into a lawsuit." There it was, full sunlight, no mask, no ambiguity. Maria's fingers stopped over the keyboard. Leon stared ahead. Janelle, still seated in the second row, clutched the rabbit in her daughter's lap so tightly her knuckles went pale. Judge Caprio turned slightly. "Officer Ruiz, are you present?" A man in a dark blue Providence police uniform stood from the side bench. Officer Daniel Ruiz was in his early 30s, compact, alert, with the stillness of someone used to chaos. He stepped forward with a file and nodded to the bench. "Yes, Your Honor." "Were you the responding officer?" "I was." "Did you prepare the report?" "Yes, sir. And I also submitted body cam excerpts and collected exterior surveillance from the pharmacy on the corner." That got everyone's attention. Victoria shifted for the first time. Miles cleared his throat. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I would ask that we address the evidentiary foundation and the issue of—" Maria leaned toward Leon and whispered something. Leon nodded once, then crossed the courtroom and bent toward the clerk's station. Judge Caprio noticed. "What is it, Ms. DeLuca?" Maria looked up. "Your Honor, I need to make the court aware of something before the evidentiary portion continues." Victoria's expression changed, only slightly, but enough. Judge Caprio nodded. "Go ahead." Maria lifted a tablet from beside her monitor. While the defendant was in the gallery this morning, she appeared to be recording despite being instructed not to. "I checked because another individual reported hearing commentary. I located what appears to be a public live stream from the defendant's social media account. It began at 9:14 a.m. and includes video from inside this courtroom." You could feel the shock move bench to bench. Victoria's head snapped toward Maria. "That is not verified." Maria kept going. "It also includes remarks about people currently present in the courtroom." Miles went white. Judge Caprio removed his glasses slowly. "Ms. Pembroke, were you live streaming this courtroom?" "No." Maria tapped T. He screamed. "Your Honor, the profile photo matches the defendant. The account is public. The stream is titled 'Let's See If TV Judge Smiles at Me.'" Gasps, real ones. This was the first major break, and everyone knew it. The construction worker straightened. A woman near the back covered her mouth. Janelle's eyes widened. Sophia looked up at her mother because children always know when a room has changed shape. Victoria tried to recover. "My assistant may have activated something earlier. This is ridiculous." Judge Caprio looked at Miles. "Counsel." Miles had no words ready. That said enough. "If there is a live stream," Judge Caprio said quietly, "then it will be preserved. Sergeant Mercer, secure the defendant's phone." Victoria recoiled. "Absolutely not. That phone contains privileged communications." Leon didn't touch her. He simply stood beside her and waited, the way gravity waits for a glass on the edge of a table. "Ms. Pembroke," Judge Caprio said, "you were warned twice. Phones do not run this courtroom. Hand it to the sergeant." She looked around as if someone might rescue her. No one moved, not even Miles, especially not Miles. With fingers suddenly less graceful than before, she pulled the phone from her tote and placed it in Leon's hand. The phone was still warm. "If you think her worst mistake was filming the judge, stay with me, because what that phone contained was far worse than anybody in that room expected." Maria connected the device to the courtroom monitor with the efficiency of someone who had stopped being surprised by people a long time ago. The large screen flickered to life. First, there was the lock screen with a photo of Victoria leaning against her Mercedes in Newport, smiling beside a glass of champagne. Then the public stream. Then the comment feed. Hearts rising, laughing emojis, followers typing, "OMG, is that really Caprio? Drag them, Poor people court law. Say something. Victoria's face lost color. The first clip began with her whispering into the phone as she entered. Small claims circus, municipal traffic theater. People on the benches heard their own room reduced to content. Then the camera panned across the waiting defendants. The man in the construction vest, the grandmother, Janelle and Sophia. Victoria's voice came through the speakers, clearer now, amplified and impossible to deny. Some people build their whole personality around being a victim. The gallery reacted instantly. A woman in the back said, "Wow." Someone else hissed through their teeth. Janelle pressed her lips together, the way people do when humiliation and anger arrive at the same time, and they refused to give either one the satisfaction of tears. The video kept going. Let's see if the celebrity judge does his little compassion act when I'm the one at the podium. That line changed the temperature around Judge Caprio, not because he looked offended, but because he didn't. He simply watched, calm, still, almost sad. Then came the part where Janelle stood to explain her missed deadline. Victoria's voice whispered through the speakers. There it is, weaponized tears. Sophia didn't fully understand the words, but she understood enough. She looked at her mother, then down at the rabbit. Janelle inhaled sharply and lowered her eyes. Miles stepped forward. Your Honor, I object to continued playback without first. Judge Caprio raised one finger, not dramatic, final. Maria paused the video. No one spoke. If a person had coughed right then, it would have sounded violent. Judge Caprio looked at Victoria, who no longer resembled the woman who had walked in at 9:12. The confidence was still there, but now it sat on her like clothing that no longer fit. Ms. Pembroke, he said, do you understand why this is a serious matter? She swallowed. I understand this is being blown out of proportion. The room reacted harder than before, not louder, just with that collective disbelief that makes silence feel like judgment. Judge Caprio leaned slightly forward. This courtroom is not content. It is not a backdrop. It is not a place where people come to be mocked so someone online can feel important. These are human beings. Victoria's jaw flexed. She didn't answer. And today, he continued, you are one of them. That line hit like a gavel, even before the gavel moved. People would quote it later. It would be clipped, replayed, stitched, captioned, and sent around group chats by the thousands. But inside that room in that second, it didn't feel like a viral line. It felt like a mirror. Share this with someone who thinks kindness is optional when nobody powerful is in the room. Because Judge Caprio had just said more in 4 words than most people manage in an hour. He turned back to the case file. Now let's discuss the incident itself. Officer Ruiz, what did you observe when you arrived on scene? Ruiz opened his report. At approximately 3:52 p.m., I responded to a multi-party traffic incident at North Main and D. Oil. A silver Mercedes SUV had crossed partially into the bike lane, while the driver appeared to be using a handheld phone. The vehicle clipped a delivery scooter operated by Mr. Omar Haddad, then struck the rear quarter panel of a gray Honda Fit operated by Ms. Janelle Price. Ms. Price's vehicle mounted the curb, causing pedestrian Alina Pike to jump back and fall against a newspaper box. A low murmur passed through the room. Judge Caprio asked, injuries? Ruiz nodded. Mr. Haddad sustained a displaced fracture to the right wrist, lacerations to the chin, and road rash along the shoulder. Ms. Pike suffered a torn meniscus and bruising to the ribs. Ms. Price was not physically hospitalized, but her 6-year-old daughter in the rear seat experienced acute distress, later documented by a pediatric counselor according to a victim statement attached. Victoria stared straight ahead, but a pulse beat visibly in her neck. Judge Caprio asked the question slowly. You described these as minor. I didn't know all of that, she said. Officer Ruiz answered before the bench did. Ma'am, I informed you on scene that an ambulance was being called. She whipped toward him. You told me someone was being checked out. That's not the same thing as acting like I committed vehicular homicide. Miles closed his eyes again. Judge Caprio's voice stayed even. Nobody here is acting. We're clarifying facts. Ruiz continued. There is also body cam audio from the scene, Your Honor. Victoria's fingers twitched against the edge of the podium. This is absurd. Judge Caprio asked Maria to play it. The courtroom monitor switched to the grainy chest-level view of Officer Ruiz stepping between cars under late afternoon sun. Horns in the distance. A woman crying. A child screaming. The metallic hiss of an engine that had just died. You could hear a scooter wheel still spinning somewhere off-screen. Then Victoria's voice cut through. Can someone tell me why no one is talking about my rim? That curb shredded my rim. The room froze again. Body cam Victoria sounded even worse than courtroom Victoria. No filter, no silk blouse, no selective phrasing, just pure reflexive selfishness. Ruiz's recorded voice answered, Ma'am, please step back. EMS is assisting an injured party. And then Victoria said the sentence nobody in that room would forget. Is he actually hurt, or is he just making this expensive? A woman in the gallery gasped so loudly that Leon turned his head. The video kept going. In the frame, paramedics crouched near Omar. His scooter lay on its side like a snapped insect. Janelle was standing beside her Honda, trying to open the back door with shaking hands while Sophia cried from the car seat. Eleanor Pike sat on the curb holding her knee, face drained white, repeating, The little girl, check the little girl. Then Victoria's recorded voice again. I have a charity event at 6. I cannot be standing here all day. Maria stopped the footage. The silence that followed was not simple anger anymore. It was something colder. The kind of disappointment people feel when cruelty removes all doubt about what it is. Judge Caprio looked toward Victoria. Do you wish to contest that the voice on this recording is yours? She said nothing. Ms. Pembroke? No. For the first time all morning, her answer was honest. Like this video, if you believe one careless sentence can tell you more about a person than 1,000 polished posts ever could. Judge Caprio asked, Are any of the injured parties present? Maria checked the file. Ms. Price is present, Your Honor. Ms. Pike submitted a medical statement but is unable to stand for long periods today. Mr. Haddad is present in the hallway and requested to enter only if needed. Victoria turned. It was involuntary, quick, alarmed. Judge Caprio nodded. Let's hear from Ms. Price. Janelle stood slowly, smoothing her cardigan with trembling fingers. Up close, the exhaustion in her face was impossible to miss. She was 31 but looked older in the way hard schedules and harder luck can age a person. Her hair was pulled into a low bun that had started to slip. Her left sleeve had a faint bleach stain near the cuff. Sophia stayed on the bench with the rabbit, watched over by an older woman 2 seats down. Janelle approached the side microphone. Judge Caprio softened his tone. Take your time. She nodded, but when she tried to speak, nothing came out at first. She swallowed and tried again. I wasn't going to say anything today, she began. I really just came for my payment extension. I didn't even know she was the other driver until I heard the name. She glanced once at Victoria, then away. I work overnight shifts as a certified nursing assistant, 12 hours, sometimes 16 if somebody calls out. That day I was taking my daughter to her speech therapy appointment before I went to sleep. We were at the light. We were stopped. I heard this screech and then this bang and my whole car jump. Sophia started screaming like, her voice cracked. Judge Caprio said gently, It's okay. Janelle nodded. I couldn't open the rear door at first because the frame bent. She was kicking and crying and I thought she was hurt. She wasn't bleeding, thank God, but she wouldn't get in a car for 2 weeks after that. She wet the bed 3 nights in a row. She still covers her ears when she hears brakes. Sophia from the bench lowered her head into the rabbit. Janelle kept going. My Honda was totaled. Insurance fought me because of mileage. I missed 3 shifts. Rent got late. Childcare got messed up. I had to borrow from my sister just to get to work. She inhaled sharply. So when I heard the video this morning and I heard her call me tears for attention, she looked directly at Victoria now. You have no idea what that week cost us. Victoria started to say something. Miles touched her arm, hard. Judge Caprio asked, "Did the defendant ever contact you?" Janelle laughed once, short and humorless. "No, sir. Her insurance people did, not her." That mattered. Everyone knew it. Then Maria said quietly, "Your Honor, there is also a submitted letter from Ms. Pike." Judge Caprio asked her to read it. Maria adjusted her glasses and unfolded a 1-page letter written in careful blue ink. My name is Alina Pike. I am 67 years old, retired from the Providence Public Library, and volunteer as a crossing aide 3 afternoons a week because I believe children deserve adults who pay attention. On September 3, I was nearly struck after a gray car mounted the curb. I twisted my knee trying to move back. 2 children with backpacks were near me. I still hear one of them crying when I close my eyes. My injury will heal. What troubles me more is watching a grown woman exit a luxury vehicle, holding her phone higher than her concern. The gallery shifted. You could feel the words settle. Maria continued. She looked at me and said, "You're okay, right?" without waiting for the answer. Then she turned toward the damaged wheel of her car. I have been a librarian for most of my life. I know the difference between ignorance and indifference. That afternoon I witnessed indifference. Even Victoria could not look up for that part. Maria lowered the paper. Judge Caprio sat back. His face was composed, but everyone in that room knew the case had moved beyond fines and moving violations. The law was still the law, but something moral had entered the room, and moral truth does not leave when procedure begins. "Bring Mr. Haddad in," he said. The back door opened. A young man stepped inside with his right wrist still braced and strapped. Omar Haddad was 27, lean, dark-haired, wearing a plain black zip-up jacket over a white t-shirt and scuffed sneakers that looked older than they should have been. There was a faint pale line along his chin where stitches had healed. He moved carefully, not dramatically, but carefully enough that pain still lived somewhere in his body. He stood at the microphone. Judge Caprio asked, "Do you wish to speak?" Omar looked at Victoria first, not with rage. That would have been easier for her. He looked at her like a person studying damage. "Yes, Your Honor." "Go ahead." "I deliver groceries and prescriptions for 2 apps and a local pharmacy," he said. "I don't make a lot, but I make enough if I keep moving. That day I was carrying an order for an older man on Benefit Street who needed insulin and soup. When her SUV came over, I had nowhere to go. I hit the side, came down on my hand and slid." His voice was calm, almost too calm. "I remember the pavement being hot. I remember hearing a little girl crying. I remember trying to stand up and not being able to." He lifted the braced wrist slightly. "This hand is my work. I couldn't grip for 6 weeks. My mother had to help me button my own shirt. My little sister asked me why I stopped braiding her hair for school in the morning." He paused, then said the line that snapped something in the room. "You don't get to call that minor because it didn't happen to you." There was no sound after that, none. Victoria blinked hard, once, twice. Judge Caprio let the silence do what it needed to do. Hit subscribe if you've ever heard one sentence that cuts straight through every excuse, because Omar had just said what half the room was thinking and all of it was true. Miles tried one last time to pull the situation back toward procedure. "Your Honor, while the testimonies are moving, we do maintain that this began as a traffic matter, and my client does not have a criminal record. She is willing to satisfy the financial obligations." Omar turned toward him, not rudely, just directly. "With respect, sir, money is the only part she tried to handle." That line made even Leon look down to hide a reaction. Judge Caprio nodded once, a fair distinction. Then he turned to Victoria. "Ms. Pembroke, you have heard from the people affected by your actions. Before I consider disposition, this is your opportunity to speak truthfully. Not strategically, truthfully." She stared at the podium. The room waited. Rain slid down the tall courthouse windows in silver threads. Somewhere in the hallway, a cart rattled past. Sophia hugged the rabbit tighter. Maria's fingers rested still on the keyboard. At last Victoria spoke. "I didn't think it was that bad." Nobody moved. "I thought," she swallowed, "I thought people were overreacting because that's what people do now. They turn things into content, into claims, into—" Her own words trapped her. She heard it too. She stopped. Judge Caprio asked softly, "Into content?" A few heads turned toward the evidence screen, where her livestream thumbnail still sat frozen. Victoria shut her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, the arrogance was still there, but now it was fighting for breath. "My whole life," she said, "I've been told that if you don't control the story, somebody else controls it." Judge Caprio answered immediately. "Control is not the same as truth." Another line people would remember. Victoria's shoulders stiffened. "You don't know what it took for me to get where I am." That was the first crack toward the real story. Everyone heard it. Judge Caprio did not pounce. "Then tell me." Miles looked alarmed. "Victoria, don't." But she was already talking. "I grew up off Cranston Street in a 2-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop. My mother worked double shifts cleaning hotel rooms. My father sold appliances until he drank himself out of 3 jobs. We were the family people talked about with pity. I hated that. I hated walking into rooms and feeling looked through. So yes, I built a life. I built a brand. I decided I would never be the person people dismissed again." Her voice had changed, still sharp but no longer polished. "And somewhere along the line," Judge Caprio said, "you started dismissing others." That landed harder than any accusation yet. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. The entire room understood now that this was no longer just about a phone or a traffic citation. It was about the way pain, if left unexamined, can grow teeth and call itself strength. Share this with someone who needs to hear that being wounded by life does not give you permission to wound everyone else. Judge Caprio asked, "Do you know what respect is, Ms. Pembroke?" She did not answer. "It is not the car you drive here. It is not the coat you wear. It is not a follower count. Respect is how you treat people when you think nobody important is watching." You could almost feel that sentence enter her bloodstream. She looked down at the podium so long that Maria finally glanced at the clock. Then Victoria said, very quietly, "I didn't think they mattered." No one had expected her to say it, not that plainly. Even Miles looked stunned. Janelle closed her eyes. Omar exhaled through his nose. Eleanor's letter lay folded on the clerk's desk like an unanswered question. Judge Caprio did not shame her for the confession. He did something more difficult. He held it up to the light. "And now?" Victoria looked toward Janelle first, then Omar, then the bench. Her face had begun to pale beneath carefully applied makeup. The room could see the moment performance met consequence and lost. "Now I know they did." A lot of defendants cry in court. Some cry because they are sorry. Some cry because they are scared. Some cry because they have finally hit the wall they were certain they could talk around. Victoria was not crying yet, but tears had reached the edge. And then the second revelation arrived. Maria lifted another paper from the file. "Your Honor, there's an additional supplement from Officer Ruiz's report that hasn't been addressed." Ruiz nodded. "Yes, sir. After the incident, the defendant requested retrieval of her phone from the front seat. It had been actively recording. The footage was later preserved because it captured events immediately before and after impact. Victoria turned so fast the podium rocked. "What?" Ruiz stayed calm. "You were advised at the scene." Miles whispered, horrified. "You told me there wasn't any active recording." Victoria's lips parted. "I forgot." Nobody believed that, not even her. Judge Caprio's eyes went to the screen. "Play it. If you want to know the exact second this case stopped being salvageable, keep watching." Because the phone she used to look powerful was about to show the whole courtroom exactly who she had been. The front camera footage began with Victoria driving. Sunglasses on, music low, phone mounted crookedly but facing inward. She was talking to herself and to her audience at once, touching up lipstick at a red light. "I swear, if one more person in this city drives like they're on public assistance and prayer." That line alone made several people in the room recoil. The light changed. She accelerated one-handed while glancing at the screen to read comments. A follower wrote, "Where are you headed?" She laughed. "To save my company from incompetence, babe." Then the road jostled. Her eyes dropped to the comments again. The wheel drifted. A horn blasted. She jerked right, overcorrected, clipped something metal and screamed. The phone fell sideways, capturing flashes of airbag, dashboard, windshield, sunlight, and then her voice, furious rather than frightened. Oh my God, are you kidding me?" She shoved the airbag away and grabbed the phone first. Not the door handle, not her seatbelt buckle, the phone. Then came the clearest, ugliest line of all. "Please tell me this didn't just happen on live." The room broke, audible disbelief. Someone muttered, "Wow." A woman near the back said, "That's evil." Leon's jaw flexed. Janelle held Sophia's rabbit against her own chest for a second because her hands needed something to do. The clip continued. Victoria stepped from the car, pointed the camera outward and said, "Everybody calm down. This idiot came out of nowhere." Then she aimed the lens toward Omar on the pavement. Maria stopped the video before it showed more. She didn't need to show more. Judge Caprio's voice was lower now, not louder. "You saw a man bleeding, and your first concern was whether your live stream had captured your inconvenience." Victoria's face crumpled for 1 second before she forced it back together. "I panicked." Omar answered from the microphone, "No, you prioritized." That was another quote that spread later, because it was brutal and exact. Judge Caprio nodded. "Mr. Haddad is correct. Panic can be human. Priority reveals character." Victoria finally broke eye contact. A tear slipped, and she wiped it away fast, almost angrily, as if offended by her own body. Then the unexpected happened. From the back row, a woman stood who had not yet spoken. Late 60s, dark green supermarket jacket, sensible shoes, hands roughened by work. Maria recognized her first. "Lorraine Bell," she whispered. Victoria turned and went still. It was her mother. Lorraine had been sitting near the back the entire time, small beneath fluorescent lights, holding a folded paste-up envelope in both hands. There was dignity in her posture and devastation in her eyes. She stepped forward only when Judge Caprio nodded permission. "Your Honor," she said, voice shaking, "I didn't plan to speak. I came on my break because she told me this was a simple ticket." Victoria whispered, "Mom, please." Lorraine looked at her daughter with a pain older than that room. "No, Victoria, not today." You could feel every person there lean inward, emotionally, even if their bodies did not move. "I cleaned 22 rooms yesterday," Lorraine said. "My knees are bad. My back is bad. I still came because I thought maybe you were being treated unfairly." She took a breath that trembled. "But I did not raise you to stand over hurt people and make yourself bigger out of their pain." Victoria shook her head, tears coming now for real. "Please don't." Lorraine's voice hardened in the way only a disappointed parent can harden. Do not tell me please now. Say please when people are bleeding. Say please when a mother can't get her child out of a car. Say please before you point a camera at strangers and call them less than you. There were tears in the gallery now too, not just sympathy, recognition. Everyone knew that tone. The one that says truth has finally lost patience. Judge Caprio let Lorraine finish. She worked hard to climb, Lorraine said softly, too hard. Somewhere she decided poor meant shameful, working tired meant weak, need meant embarrassing. I spent years telling her that a person is not better because their shoes cost more. Lorraine looked down. I don't know when she stopped hearing me. Victoria covered her mouth. And suddenly the schadenfreude that had been carrying the room began to shift. Not vanish, transform. People still felt anger, but now there was grief inside it, because watching a person fall is easy. Watching them realize what they became is different. Like this video, if you believe the hardest truth to hear is the one spoken by someone who loved you before you earned anything. Judge Caprio asked Lorraine, do you wish to say anything to the victims? Lorraine turned first to Janelle, I'm sorry. Then to Omar, I'm sorry. Then toward the letter from Alina Pike, and to Ms. Pike too, I'm sorry. She was not excusing her daughter. She was stepping into the silence her daughter had created and trying to put something human back into it. Victoria wept openly now, shoulders shaking once then again. Miles placed a tissue box beside her without a word. Still, Judge Caprio did not rush to comfort. Mercy without accountability is sentiment. He knew that. Everyone in that room felt it. Ms. Pembroke, he said, you've heard testimony, recordings, and your own mother. You have two choices now. Continue defending the image you built or tell the truth about the harm you caused. Victoria wiped her face with shaking fingers. Her voice, when it came, was stripped raw. I was awful. No flourish, no legal phrasing, no branding language, just the truth, short and ugly. I was awful, she repeated louder. I saw people and sorted them in my head. Important, not important. Useful, not useful. I tell myself I'm strong, but really I've just been cruel in expensive ways. There it was. The room did not forgive her for saying it, but it believed she meant it. She turned toward Janelle. I am sorry. Then Omar, I am sorry. Then toward the clerk's desk where Alina's letter lay. And I'm sorry to Ms. Pike. Omar did not soften yet. Janelle did not nod. They weren't supposed to, not this quickly, not because an apology arrived once exposure became inevitable. Judge Caprio asked, why did you film this courtroom? Victoria inhaled shakily. Because I thought if I controlled the narrative, I couldn't be humiliated. Judge Caprio answered with the line that became the heart of the story. Humility is not humiliation. Sometimes it is the beginning of a conscience. The room went quiet again, but this time it was a different quiet, less sharp, more searching. He then asked Maria to read the probation-style background note attached to Victoria's civil settlement file. It mentioned her business, her divorce, her charitable appearances, her lack of criminal record, and one other detail. Her company had recently lost a major retail partnership after complaints from employees about degrading treatment. That was the third revelation. The behavior in court was not an isolated crack. It was a pattern. Miles objected weakly. That matter is separate. Judge Caprio said, character often is not. Victoria looked like she wanted the floor to split under her and finish the work, but it did not. Instead, the room moved toward the choice point. Judge Caprio folded his hands and addressed the victims. The court can impose fines, license consequences, and sanctions for improper recording. It can also consider restorative conditions if the injured parties believe there is some value in that path. I want to hear from you. No one expected what came next. Omar stepped forward first. If you had asked me a month ago, he said, I would have wanted the max on everything. I was angry, still am. I lost work. I lost sleep. I lost trust in people for a while. He looked at Victoria. But if you just pay and leave, you'll tell yourself you handled it. You'll write a check, post a quote, and keep going. Victoria flinched because every word rang true. Omar kept going. I don't want your money to be the whole story. I want your time. I want you where people can't be edited. That line made Maria look up sharply. My mother works at a rehab center on Prairie Avenue. Spinal injuries, stroke recovery, people learning to hold a cup again, tie a shoe again, say their names again, go there every week. No camera, no assistant, no posting. Let your inconvenience meet real inconvenience. Even Judge Caprio seemed taken by that. Then Janelle spoke. I want my deductible covered, she said plainly. A ripple of restrained laughter moved through the gallery because honesty can cut tension cleaner than humor. And I want the rental days insurance denied, and the counseling bills for Sophia. She glanced down at her daughter, then back up. But I agree with him. If she just pays, she'll think this was about bad luck. I want her to do something that hurts in the place money can't fix. The room knew exactly what she meant. Share this with someone who understands that real accountability is not always about punishment alone. Sometimes it is about forcing a heart to do work a wallet cannot. Judge Caprio asked if Eleanor Pike had expressed a preference in her letter. Maria scanned the final paragraph and nodded. She wrote, if the driver ever becomes teachable, let her spend time where service is done quietly. Let her stand with crossing guards in bad weather and learn what attention actually looks like. The gallery actually murmured approval. Victoria stood motionless, tears drying on her cheeks. For the first time that morning, nobody was speaking over her, around her, or for her. Everyone was describing a road forward. The question was whether she would take it. Judge Caprio turned to her. Would you accept such conditions? She whispered yes. He asked again, firmer. Not because they save face, not because they reduce penalties. Would you accept them because you understand why they are appropriate? Victoria lifted her head. Her mascara had slightly smudged beneath one eye. She looked less glamorous now, more human, which in that room was not a downgrade. Yes, she said, because I need them. That was the breakthrough. But the story still had one more turn, and it came from the place nobody expected. At this point, most people thought Judge Caprio would sentence her, lecture her, and close the file. Instead, he asked Leon to hand him a final envelope that had arrived that morning and been added late to the docket. It appears, he said, reading the front, to be from a former employee of Ms. Pembroke's company. Victoria closed her eyes. Maria opened it and read aloud. My name is Brianna Cho. I worked for Pembroke and Vale for 11 months. I am writing because I saw the defendant's social media post saying she was going to court over a fake claim. I need the court to know that this attitude is not new. She often filmed staff without consent, mocked accents, and called customers budget bodies when they asked for sale pricing. I quit after she made a receptionist cry for buying drugstore mascara. If she looks sorry when embarrassed, remember that some people only discover humanity when it finally costs them something. That letter cut through any temptation to wrap the day in easy redemption. It reminded the room that accountability is not one apology deep. Victoria wept harder, not loudly, worse, quietly, the kind that comes when there is nowhere left to hide. Judge Caprio let the pain settle before he spoke. Ms. Pembroke, the court does not exist to destroy people for sport, but neither does it exist to protect them from the truth. A careless second can become somebody else's longest year. A cruel sentence can echo longer than broken glass. Today, your phone did not expose a misunderstanding. It exposed a pattern. That quote traveled everywhere later. He then laid out the consequences. A substantial fine for the moving violations. Full restitution to Janelle for deductible, denied rental costs, and counseling expenses for Sophia. restitution and lost income compensation to Omar, a separate sanction for prohibited recording and disruption of the court, mandatory completion of an advanced distracted driving course, 120 hours of community service, split between the rehab center on Prairie Avenue and school crossing safety assistance coordinated through the city. 12 public speaking sessions, approved by probation, at high schools and driver education programs on distracted driving and digital entitlement. A 6-month review hearing before the court, and one more condition. No social media monetization of this incident, Judge Caprio said. No turning accountability into branding. If you speak publicly, it will be to educate, not profit. That drew a visible reaction from Victoria, because it touched the exact nerve that had ruled her life. "Yes, Your Honor," she whispered. But the most powerful part of the sentence was still coming. Judge Caprio leaned forward. "I am not sending you to jail today, not because what you did is small. It is not. I am not doing it because I believe shame can harden some people and awaken others. Which one you become is now your responsibility." People in the room felt that deeply. Then he added the line that made even Maria blink back tears. "Mercy is not the opposite of justice. Mercy is justice with a future." There it was, the unexpected compassion moment, the twist nobody saw coming, not an escape, a burden, a chance. Victoria broke completely. Not the elegant crying from earlier, not the careful tears of a woman used to being watched. She bent at the waist, hand to her face, shoulders shaking, a sound escaping her that was closer to grief than embarrassment. Leon shifted, perhaps ready to steady her if she fell. Miles put a hand near her back but did not touch. Lorraine Bell covered her own mouth and cried from the back row. Omar watched with a steady expression. Janelle watched too. Neither smiled. Justice had been served, but not cheaply. Everyone in the room knew this moment would go viral if it ever got out. But inside that courtroom, it did not feel like spectacle anymore. It felt like a rare thing, a person meeting the full cost of being themselves. Like this video, if you believe the strongest people are not the ones who never break. They are the ones who finally stop lying about why they needed to. By the time court adjourned on that matter, it was 11:06 a.m. Victoria did not rush out. That surprised everyone. Most people in her position would have fled the instant they were free to move. Instead, she turned first to Janelle. "I'll have the paperwork today," she said, voice rough. "Not through insurance, directly, whatever the court requires." Janelle gave a small nod, not warm, not cruel. "Make sure Sophia's counseling is included." "It will be." Then Victoria faced Omar. This was harder. "I don't expect forgiveness." Omar answered, "Good, expect work." He turned and walked out, brace visible beneath fluorescent light, leaving her with the only answer she deserved. She next approached her mother. Lorraine looked at her daughter for a long time before speaking. "Come by after work." Victoria whispered, "Okay." No hug, no instant repair. Sometimes that is what mercy looks like when it has self-respect. Sergeant Leon returned her phone, only after the necessary preservation steps were complete. When he placed it in her hand, he said something so quietly only a few people heard it. "Ma'am, the truth doesn't get nervous because someone points a camera at it." Another line, another arrow straight to the center. Victoria nodded once, unable to answer. That could have been the end. In most viral stories it would have been. Arrogant woman exposed. Judge delivers wisdom. Crowd stunned. Roll credits. But real transformation is not proven in a single morning. It is tested in the weeks after the cameras are gone. And this is where the story gets better than anybody expected. 3 weeks later, on November 6, 2025, a counselor at the Harbor Rehabilitation Center on Prairie Avenue signed Victoria Pembroke in at 7:58 a.m. sharp. No makeup crew, no sunglasses, no assistant, no phone in her hand. Just a plain gray sweater, jeans, and sneakers that actually looked like they had been bought for walking rather than display. The first day, almost nobody knew who she was. The second day, one nurse recognized her from a clip that had leaked from outside court and spread on local pages. By the third week, everyone knew. Not because she told them, because news travels. At first, some staff hated the idea that she was there for service hours. One occupational therapist, Lena Morales, said later, "I thought she'd last 2 shifts and fake a migraine." Lena was 34, direct, impossible to charm, the kind of woman who could identify performative remorse from across a parking lot. But Victoria kept showing up. She sanitized wheelchairs, restocked gloves, changed water pitchers, read forms aloud to patients whose hands shook too much to hold them. She sat beside a retired bus driver relearning vowels after a stroke and repeated sounds with him for 40 minutes because he kept losing the shape of the word yes. She watched a 16-year-old soccer player named Malik try not to cry while learning to lift a spoon with adaptive support after a spinal injury. The first week she barely spoke. The second week she asked questions. The third week, Lena found her in the supply room crying after helping a patient in his 50s zip his own jacket for the first time since his accident. Lena crossed her arms. "What's wrong?" Victoria wiped her face. He kept apologizing for taking so long. Lena shrugged. "People do that when they feel like burdens." Victoria whispered, "I used to make people feel like that on purpose." Lena looked at her hard, then stop. That was it, no therapy speech, no cinematic music, just stop. And she did. At the same time, on rainy weekday afternoons, Victoria began reporting to a crossing safety post near Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary, where Alina Pike sometimes still volunteered during her recovery, knee brace and all. The first day they saw each other there, Alina said only one thing. "Eyes up, children first." Victoria nodded, "Yes, ma'am." Cars hissed through wet streets, backpacks bounced, parents rushed, little hands reached for trusted adults. For 2 hours at a time, Victoria stood in fluorescent vest and gloves, palm raised, watching traffic with the kind of attention she once believed beneath her. More than once she startled at how easy it would have been for one distracted glance to become a funeral. That realization settled in slowly, then deeply. Hit subscribe if you believe some lessons only stick when life makes you stand in the exact place your carelessness once endangered. Meanwhile, Omar did not go easy on her. The court had allowed periodic restorative check-ins if the injured parties wished to participate, and Omar did. Not because he wanted revenge, because he wanted evidence. Their first meeting took place in a plain conference room at the rehab center with Lena present and a probation coordinator taking notes. Omar set his brace on the table and asked Victoria one question. "When you looked at me on the ground, what did you see?" Victoria started to answer too fast. "I saw that someone was hurt and—" He shook his head. "No, that's what you say now. What did you see then?" She stared at her hands. "A problem," she said finally. He nodded once. "Good, start there." Every session was like that, honest, surgical, no theatrics. He asked her to name what she had assumed about him from one glance. She admitted it, that he was probably uninsured, that he would exaggerate, that he needed her money, that he mattered less than her schedule. Saying it aloud made it uglier than it had sounded in her head. "Why?" Omar would ask. And each time she dug deeper. Because wealth had become her shield. Because humiliation had become her religion. Because if someone looked poor, tired, foreign, overwhelmed, or emotional, she associated them with everything she had spent her life trying to outrun. Because she had confused distance with safety. Because she had built success on top of unhealed shame and called the structure confidence. One December afternoon, after a long silence, Omar finally said, "That's the first real thing you